So welcome everyone to the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review. This is a beautiful summer day, August 14th. And so I appreciate everyone's dedication to attend the meeting on such a beautiful Friday afternoon. I'd also like to start by thanking staff for all their hard work to date on this bylaw review. This is a lot of work. And a lot of employees actually contract this out. And so we're very lucky to have the expertise in-house to do this. So thank you to Dysart staff. I'd also like to thank all the members of the public that are attending today and have made comments. Many of you have pre-submitted your comments, so thank you, and others will be able to speak. So thank you for attending this and being part of the process. This is a public open house to discuss a draft zoning bylaw for the municipality and to hear your comments about this document. A notice to all those in attendance that this meeting will be live streamed to YouTube and recorded. Please note that the recording will be linked to the municipal website following this meeting. The meeting is being hosted via electronic participation format due to the emergency declaration for COVID-19. Information regarding live streaming of the open house, as well as all documentation regarding the general review of the zoning bylaw, are available on the Municipality of Dysart et al. Website. Once I open the floor for public comments, registered attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions about the draft bylaw and or voice their opinion regarding the same. Please direct all your questions and comments to me, the chair. Please identify yourself before speaking. You will have approximately 5 minutes to discuss your comments. The comments received at this meeting will be addressed to the comments received during the process. Council will then discuss all public comments received on the bylaw and will give further direction to staff. Staff will revise the draft bylaw based upon Council's decision, or direction, pardon me. The final draft of the bylaw will be considered by Council later this fall. Should Council decide to approve the zoning bylaw amendment, all those persons who have given the municipality written notice that they wish to be notified of the decision will receive notice that the bylaw has been approved. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the proposed zoning bylaw, you must make your request for notification in writing to the Municipality of Dysart et al. The Planning Act specifies that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Municipality of Dysart et al. Before the proposed zoning bylaw is approved, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So now I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Director of Planning, and he will provide an explanation of the process and the proposed amendments. So Jeff Isles, I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank everybody for attending today. This is certainly a unique electronic open house. Before I start, I just want to echo the Mayor's comments and advise all attending today that if you want to follow along, the presentation and all the proposed amendments are available on the municipality's website. Tammy, do you mind bringing up my presentation right now? Thank you very much. And we're just going to move on to slide 2. So this is just a brief overview of what we will be discussing today. We're going to discuss planning policy documents. What is a zoning bylaw and why is it being updated? What is the purpose of the open house that we are having today? The status of the review process, the documents that can be found on our website. As well as I will review all the changes. And once I'm done reviewing all the changes, we will move into the public presentation and public consultation portion of the meeting. So to get started, in Ontario, planning policies are developed within a hierarchy where broad policies are developed at the upper levels of government and refined to more detail as you get to the lower levels of government. The Municipality of Dysart et al.'s official plan must conform or be consistent with both provincial policy and that of the County of Haliburton official plan. The County of Haliburton official plan provides general planning policy and direction for the entire county, whereas the Dysart et al. Official plan translates those policies into more detailed planning policies specifically for our community. The zoning bylaw, which we are here to discuss today, implements those policies of our official plan and contains specific requirements within it that are legally enforceable. So what is a zoning bylaw? I think most people have a general idea of what a zoning bylaw is, but for those who don't, a zoning bylaw is a legal document that regulates the land use and future development within the community. Zoning bylaws are the principal tools that municipalities use to implement the policies of an official plan, and this certainly helps to manage potential conflict between properties and different uses. The municipality's current zoning bylaw, which is bylaw 2005-120, was first passed by council in 2005. And similar to the process that we're going through right now, it has been amended several times since then. A zoning bylaw establishes a series of zones. So you have your residential zones, commercial zones, institutional, environmental zones. And all these zones are shown on a map, which will help the staff and public look up the zoning for their specific property of interest. Each zone includes provisions for the types of uses that are permitted for each property and specific standards for how a property may be developed. A zoning bylaw also includes definitions for permitted uses and other requirements, say, for example, where a building can be located on a property, which is done using setbacks. And these setbacks can be from roads and streets and even water bodies. So why are we amending the zoning bylaw today? So on May 17th, 2018, a new official plan for the municipality of Dysart et al. Was approved by the County of Haliburton. The new official plan establishes an updated vision and policy framework to guide the growth and development in the municipality, but also introduces new priorities for how the municipality will evolve. In accordance with Section 26(9) of the Planning Act, the municipality is now required to amend the bylaw, and the timeframe that the Planning Act gives us is 3 years from that approval date. This will ensure that zoning bylaw conforms to the provincial policy and the policy of the county official plan, as well as our recently approved official plan, but also ensure that the planning policies of the municipality are current and address the needs of the community. The open house, here we are today. So the purpose of this open house is to provide the public and all interested parties with an opportunity to review the zoning bylaw changes, take a look at our mapping, look at the illustrations, and ask questions of staff and council about these proposed changes. This is the first opportunity that the public has to review these changes. I should note that there will be additional meetings. These changes will be further discussed at council meeting, and we'll also have a public meeting in September. Just to update everybody on the status of the review process, we are now into about eighth month of the comprehensive review of our bylaw. We are now at the point of the process where we have developed and prepared a draft zoning bylaw for public discussion. Excuse me. The draft bylaw addresses the planning policy direction from the upper levels of government and direction from council, as well as comments received from staff and the public. We will continue to revise the draft bylaw based upon the comments received today during the public consultation process, pending council direction from the August council meeting. Further meetings will be held as mentioned. These meetings will be advertised in the local newspaper and posted on the municipality's website. We will also circulate key agencies, cottage associations with notices of this meeting as per the Planning Act. Please note that the date of the public meeting that was scheduled for September has been changed to Friday, September 25th from the existing date, which was September 22nd. This posed a bit of a conflict as the September 22nd meeting was during a council meeting. We will update the website, and all future notices will be updated to reflect this change. If you wish to be notified of future meetings, you must submit a written request to the municipality. And I've mentioned the documents on the website. In normal times, we would all be able to meet informally, discuss these changes. Everybody would be able to view the maps, and we could all have some discussions. Unfortunately, these are not normal times. So here we are today having a virtual open house. To help with the virtual process, a special page has been set up on the municipality's website to explain the comprehensive review process. It outlines the work schedule. It lists the upcoming meetings, provides links to the draft bylaw and background documents. There you'll also find the draft zoning bylaw, as well as the draft maps and draft illustrations, and a summary of the proposed amendments. So it's a bit of a one-stop shopping. And as you can see, the links provided here for you. So I'm going to go into reviewing the changes. The changes that are proposed update and build on the existing characteristics and existing policies. This is not a huge shift in planning direction, rather than an evolution of the existing planning policy for Dysart. I'm going to review the key amendments now as quickly as possible before turning the floor back over to the mayor afterwards for the public consultation portion of the meeting. If you like, you can follow along with the document. It's entitled Proposed Amendments. Thank you, Tammy, for bringing that up. And as always, if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt. I will probably have my head buried in this spreadsheet, so feel free to interrupt verbally. I'm going to start in section 2, which is the section for definitions. The first proposed amendment is a definition for the term attached has been added to the bylaw. A new update is also proposed for council consideration today that is not currently in the draft bylaw. The definition of attached has been updated to include a reference to patio. Please note that today I will be bringing forward 14 new amendments that all relate to the provisions related to patios, and specifically that patios are going to generally take on the provisions of decks. Section 2.36, the definition for dwelling unit area. This is also a new proposal for council consideration. The definition of dwelling unit area has been updated, again, to include a reference that patios are excluded from the calculation for dwelling unit area. You will note that some of the section numbers in my document are slightly off. This is due to adjustments being made to accommodate new definitions in the draft bylaw. Moving on to section 2.37, the definition for enclosed. Again, this is a new proposed definition for council consideration. The definition of enclosed has been updated to clarify that an attached patio is not considered enclosed. Tammy, can you move to the next page, please? Thank you. Section 2.XX, a new definition for fence has been added to the bylaw, and this is to clarify previous misinterpretations of the bylaw. Section 2.49, the definition for gross floor area. Again, this is a new proposal for council consideration today. The definition of gross floor area has been updated to include reference that patios are excluded from the calculation for gross floor area. Section 2.50, the definition for ground floor area. Again, this is a new proposal for council consideration today. The definition of ground floor area has been updated to include reference that patios are included in the calculation for ground floor area. Section 2.60, the definition for healthcare center has been updated to include retirement homes as a permitted use under a healthcare center. Section 2.61, a new definition has been added for backyard hens. Section 2.62, a new definition has been added for hen coops. And section 2.63, a new definition has been added for hen runs. Again, the numbers are slightly off. This is section 2.61. The definition of home industry has been updated to clarify that a private cabin used as a rental opportunity cannot be considered a home industry. Section 2.78, the definition for shoreland lot coverage. This is a new update for council consideration. The definition of shoreland lot coverage has been updated to include patios in that calculation. Section 2.82, a clerical correction has been made to the definition for front lot line. Section 2.XX, which is the definition for patio. This is a new update for council consideration as well. As per council direction at the council meeting in July, a definition has been added for a patio to regulate the size and location of patios. And the provisions today, I know I'm coming forward with a lot of provisions for patios. The intent is that patios will be take on the similar provisions to decks. And this is to protect the natural shoreline and privacy of property owners. Section 2.127, the definition of private cabin has been updated to clarify the intended use of private cabins for overflow sleeping accommodation and that they are not to be used for rental opportunities. The definition of private cabin has also been updated to clarify that a yurt is considered a private cabin and that a tent is not a private cabin. Section
Jeff? Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes, Larry.
Yeah. Just to step back to the patios for just a proper definition. Patios are they viewed as something at grade level, something that's not raised?
Correct. No, I will read that definition out for council today and for the public attending. Yeah. So the proposed definition of patio reads that it is a platform or surfaced area that is not enclosed, which may or may not be attached to a main dwelling or other accessory building, and which is accessible and usable as an outdoor living area, the surface of which is not more than 0.3 meters above finished grade. A patio does not include a deck or veranda. So I think that addresses your comments, Councillor Clark, that it's to be only 0.3 meters above finished grade at a maximum.
Yeah, I've seen it raised before with some committee of adjustment items where it was not viewed as something that was attached to the house and therefore it could be dealt with separately. The other factor was the fact that it was at ground level, like there's no rise to it at all, and it gave a little bit more flexibility when they were looking at the design of a house that was included in the overall floor, the footprint. But this just, by the looks of what you've got here, this kind of solidifies that a little bit more. So it takes care of the gray area there.
That's right. And again, the provisions proposed today are for patios to take on similar provisions to decks. So decks currently attached to buildings can extend 3 meters into setbacks, except for side lot line setbacks. You can have decks or proposed patios down by the shoreline to a maximum size, including certain setbacks from side lot lines. So it still does provide provisions for detached and detached patios.
Yeah. But traditionally, I've seen patios as flagstone or sometimes paving stones, but they're right in the ground as opposed to any kind of above or anything on the ground or above the ground structure. So thank you.
Moving on, I think we were at section 2.102, the definition of naturalized open space. This is also a new update for council consideration today. Currently, patios are considered naturalized open space. The definition of naturalized open space has been updated to remove patios as areas included in naturalized open space. And again, the intent is to protect natural shorelines. Moving on, section 2.130, a clerical update was made to the definition of Quonset hut. Section 2.131 was a definition for raft. I clarified the definition of raft and added provisions to ensure rafts are located in front of the owner's lands to avoid conflicts with neighboring property owners. Provisions are proposed for rafts in section 3, which is the general provisions of the bylaw. As per council direction from the last council meeting, a new update is provided for council consideration today. The definition has been updated to clarify rafts as constructed platforms. The intent of this definition is for rafts not to include inflatable toys, trampolines, and swim mats. Section 2.162, which is the definition of structure. It has been updated to use a defined term, which is windmill, as opposed to the previous term, which was windmill. Or sorry, I think I said windmill twice. Wind turbine as opposed to windmill. Section 2.XX, which is a definition for urban agriculture. A new definition has been added. Adding provisions for urban agriculture will bring the bylaw into conformance with the provisions of the official plan. Proposed provisions are defined in section 3, which is the general provisions portion of the bylaw. Section 2.182, the definition of water body, has been updated. And to remove the required minimum water setback from human-made recreational ponds that have no inlet or outlet water body. The next section is a definition for yurt. As per council direction, a definition for yurt has been proposed. Yurts have been added as permitted uses in the rural residential and rural zones as well. That concludes section 2, which is the definition portion of the bylaw. Moving on to section 3, which is the general provision portion. Section 3.1b, which is structures permitted in minimum setback areas. This section has been updated to permit gates and inclined elevators to be located in the minimum setback area. The provisions have also been updated to regulate decks located in the minimum water setback to comply with side lot line setbacks for main buildings. And again, the intent of this is to protect privacy with neighboring property owners. A new update is provided for council consideration today, updating provisions of section 3.1b to also include patios as structures permitted in the minimum setback area. The size of patios will be regulated the same as decks. This is designed again to protect the natural shoreline and the privacy of adjacent property owners. Section 3.1d, private cabins. This is a clerical update to use a defined term. However, a new update is also provided for council direction today. The provisions for private cabins are updated to regulate the size of patios attached to private cabins. Currently, decks attached to private cabins are permitted to a maximum ground floor area of 15 square meters, and that is what is proposed for patios as well. Section 3.1e, which is two-story accessory structures. There was a clerical update to use a defined term. Again, a new update is also provided for council consideration. Similar to private cabins, staff have updated the provisions for two-story accessory buildings to regulate the size of patios attached to private cabins. Section 3.1i, provisions have been added for rafts to regulate the number, size, and location of rafts. Rafts have been added as a permitted use in the lakes and rivers zone. Section 3.1j, backyard hens. Provisions have been added to regulate the number of hens permitted, as well as the size and location of the hen runs and hen coops. The intent of backyard hens is to support the local food system as both an economic driver and as a contributor to the quality of life within the community, and to address concerns about sustainable food production and food security. The regulations enable backyard chickens within and around the village and hamlets while minimizing impacts on neighboring property owners. Section 3.1k, which is urban agriculture. Provisions have been added for urban agriculture to support the local food system as an economic driver and as a contributor to the quality of life within the community. These provisions will bring the bylaw into conformance with the provisions of the municipality's official plan. Similar to backyard hens, regulations are provided to enable various types of urban agriculture within and around the village and hamlet areas while minimizing land use impacts on neighboring properties. Section 3.5, a clerical update has been made to the provisions of contained outdoor storage. Moving on, section 3.7, encroachment into setbacks. This is a new update for council consideration today. Section 3.7A is updated to permit patios attached to a main building to extend 3 meters into a setback. Again, this is the same as the provisions for attached decks. Section 3.19, non-complying structures and lots. Provisions have been added to clarify that the height of dwellings with legal non-complying status that are located within 10 meters of the high water mark cannot be increased. So the height can't be increased. And again, this is how it was always interpreted, but we've clarified the provisions just to help everybody. A new update is also provided for council consideration today. Section 3.19A5 is updated to include regulations that the area of encroachment for legal non-complying patios located within 10 meters of the high water mark cannot be increased. Section 3.22, parking and queuing provisions have been added for a car wash. Moving on a couple slides, Tammy, to section 3.30, street setbacks. A clerical update has been made to a reference. Section 3.33, wind turbines. Again, a clerical update has been made. Moving on to section 5 of the bylaw, which is the residential zone portion of the bylaw. Backyard hens and urban agriculture have been added as permitted uses in the urban and suburban residential zones, with a note that urban agriculture is not permitted on a property with multi-residential development. Yurts have been added as a permitted use in the rural residential zone. A note requiring converted dwellings, which are basement apartments, requiring them to be serviced by sanitary sewer systems in the urban residential type 1, 2, and 3 zones has been removed. And this new change is consistent with the section of in the official plan for secondary dwelling units. A new change is also proposed for council consideration today. Previous proposals have been previously I proposed backyard hens as a permitted use in the rural residential zone, and I'm proposing to remove this. The reason being that hobby farms are already a permitted use in the rural residential zone. So they will still be permitted to have hens, but they will not be limited to 4 hens and some of the other restrictions that go with having backyard hens in the urban and suburban residential zones. Moving on to section 6, which is the institutional zones. Urban agriculture has been added as a permitted use to the 2 institutional zones. This will allow for community gardens and the like at schools or hospitals or other similar uses. Moving on to section 9, which is the rural zones. This section has been amended to permit private cabins that are permitted as a principal residential use to have sewage facilities, whereas currently they're not permitted to have sewage facilities. Yurts have also been added as a permitted use in the rural zones. Section 9.3C of the bylaw has been removed. This is a pretty substantial change and will affect the zoning designation for 674 properties. All properties currently zoned with section 9.3C will be rezoned to rural residential -5. The rural residential -5 zone has the exact same permitted uses and provisions as section 9.3C. So it is affecting a lot of properties, but there will be zero impact on those properties and property owners. The zone designations will be updated on the zone schedules and will make interpretation of our zoning bylaw much easier for staff and the public. And lastly, section 10, the environmental zones. Rafts have been added as a permitted use in the lakes and river zone. And thank you very much for your patience going through that. I will now pass the floor back to the mayor to begin the public consultation portion of the meeting.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jeff, for all of that information. And as I said at the outset of the meeting, that is a lot of work. And as we get information over a certain number of years. You know, we've been adding and taking notes, and so that's why these things come together. They don't, they come together slowly. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is we're going to hear from the presenters first, and I'll ask our administrator, Danielle, to bring the different people who have registered and sent us information. And then we'll also open it up to the floor to all of other members of the public. And at this time, it's really meant to be more of a conversation. So as the presenters go through, if councillors have questions, I can, just so you all know, I don't see the members of the public, but I do see all of you councillors. So all you have to do is just raise your hand and unmute yourself, and you'll be allowed to speak. So Danielle, I'm going to ask you to bring the first presenter, which is Christine Legg. And she'll just give a sec while she unmutes you. There you are. And now I can see you, Christine. You just have to unmute yourself.
There we go.
And I can hear you. So thank you. Welcome, Christine. And we did receive your information, but if you want to go over it, go right ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor Roberts. Well, you know, my name's Christine Legg. I have concerns with 3 defined terms in the zoning bylaw. The first term is water setbacks. The Dysart official plan 5.1.2 states that the shoreline setback for an individual lot is defined in the implementing zoning bylaw as water setback. I'm going to get back to the information you have online. That is my third concern with the defined terms. So the defined term water setback is not included in the zoning bylaw. Only minimum water setback is included. The Dysart official plan includes the wording for new lot creation, development, including the septic system tile bed, must be set back a minimum of 30 meters from the high water mark of a lake. I would like to recommend that adding the defined term for water setback as per the official plan, describe what the water setback is, explain how the 30-meter setback is measured from the high water mark, and include an illustration showing how to measure it. Is it a straight line, up and down slopes, or could this measurement be interpreted as 30 meters above the high water mark? My second defined term is water body. This defined term for water body is not clear and it's very confusing. The first line reads, pond, river, stream, or any other area which is permanently covered by water. Algonquin Highlands, Minden Hills, and Highland East, all within the county of Haliburton, all have a consistent defined term contained within their zoning bylaw for water course. Highland East also has an additional definition for water body. My suggestion is simplify and change the defined term for water body to be clear what a water body includes. Does a water body include an intermittent stream? I suggest that Dysart zoning bylaw also include a defined term for water course to clarify what a water course is in Dysart. It would be beneficial for clear protection of surface water features if all municipalities and townships within the county of Haliburton contained consistent definitions for water course and water body. Currently, Dysart zoning bylaw does not contain a definition for water course, but the County of Haliburton Shoreline Tree Preservation Bylaw applies to all lands in the County of Haliburton that are within 30 meters of a water course. The county also includes the defined term body of water in documents, but not the defined term water body. PPS 20, the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, Section 1.2, coordination provides a coordinated, integrated, and comprehensive approach should be used when dealing with planning matters within municipalities, including managing natural heritage, water, ecosystems, shorelines, and watersheds. These jurisdictions all share common geographic economic issues. We feel that there should be a coordinated approach in accordance with provincial policy. Planning matters should be justly and fairly applied equally between neighbors. My last defined term is lot frontage, which you have on the screen. Dysart official plan lot size and shape refers to any lot to be created or further developed will be the size and shape suitable to accommodate the proposed use in accordance with the relevant lot area and lot frontage provisions. I'd like to suggest that to refine the defined term of lot frontage, to clarify and clearly identify how the lot frontage distance is measured for a standard waterfront lot or a through waterfront lot. Support the defined term with a sketch showing the distance measured along a horizontal straight line where the side lot lines intersect the front lot line. I have provided examples of the defined terms lot frontage from the Township of Minden Hills and the Township of Algonquin Highlands. Highland East also measures lot frontage in straight line distance. I have provided examples from the Township of Georgian Bay, I have provided illustration examples from the Township of Georgian Bay. Minden Hills zoning bylaw also includes a sketch for lot frontage, figure 1. I have provided confirmation that historically the municipality has measured lot frontage in the straight line distance. I have provided a planning opinion confirming that lot frontage for a shoreline property is to be measured as a straight line. The current defined term for lot frontage may be open for misinterpretation of the existing wording and may allow developers to use a shoreline frontage measurement around the shoreline instead of a straight line distance measurement required in the defined term for lot frontage. Planning matters cannot be justly and fairly applied comparing two waterfront parcels, one with a meandering shoreline versus another with a straight shoreline, if using a shoreline measurement. The defined term should not be confused with shoreline measurement or simply frontage. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Christine. And so I just want to, because it is a conversation, to see, Jeff, if you have any comments on those 3 things. I was sort of trying to listen and also take some notes in terms of water body, water setback, lot frontage. Any comments? And then we'll see if there's any comments from any councillors.
With regards to the first 2 suggestions or concerns with regards to our definitions for water setback and water body, staff would like a little bit more time to take a look at those before commenting. We will look at that and bring these comments forward to the council meeting in August for discussion. And again, whatever is discussed at the August meeting in council will go back to the public meeting in September. With regards to how lot frontage is measured, Ms. Legg is correct. We currently do measure it along the shoreline. And this was done due to the strict interpretation of our zoning bylaw. Reading the definitions for lot frontage, front lot line, high water mark, and shoreline, that is what our bylaw states to do. I should note that this interpretation has been successfully defended at the local planning appeal tribunal. But I can confirm that we did historically measure it in a straight line. And as Ms. Legg notes, some of the surrounding municipalities do as well. I did a bit of research on this after receiving Ms. Legg's submission. One of the documents I looked at was the American Planning Association, and it's called a Planner's Dictionary, and it has hundreds of terms. And it does note that shoreline frontage should be measured in a straight line as well. So staff really feel both options are viable, and staff look to council to how they want to move forward with measuring lot frontage for standard waterfront lots and through waterfront lots, I should clarify. So we can again, as the mayor mentioned today, no decisions will be made today. We can take this forward to council for direction, but we can have discussion today.
Right, so today is mainly for just clarification and questions in the comments. And so I do see a question from Councillor Clark. And just unmute.
Yeah, I support the aspect of doing the straight line measurements. I know that there can be a lot of confusion where they followed, on a regular shoreline, and sometimes it is used as a basis for misrepresenting the size of a lot. In some cases, that can happen. But it does provide for some, at least a principle of consistent, measurements and ability to evaluate a property.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Smith?
Thank you. a great presentation, Christine. Thanks for bringing this forward. Quite a bit of thoughtful content there. Jeff, a question for you is, as has been noted, our neighboring municipalities do it on a straight line basis. Would there be any disadvantages in your mind to being consistent with the neighboring municipalities?
Disadvantages to being consistent with them
No,
or inconsistent?
no, I know we're inconsistent right now. My question was for Jeff.
Well, I don't think we really are inconsistent right now. I think it's if you read the lot frontage definition, it does say how the distance will be measured. There has been some misinterpretation very recently, but if you read the zoning bylaw carefully, the definition for lot frontage, it does say that the distance shall be measured along a line which is parallel to a line joining. So you have the second section of the lot frontage definition. In the case of a standard waterfront lot, the distance between 2 points on the front lot line that are furthest apart. So this has been misinterpreted that you go around the shoreline instead of doing a straight line. There's many examples within the municipality of Dysart that they measured lot frontage in a straight line. Pat Martin confirmed that it was measured in a straight line. I don't understand why the municipality would recently change that. And it just doesn't appear to make any sense if you have two lots that are each 100-foot wide at the back, but one has a meandering shoreline that goes in 700 feet. So you're representing that lot frontage as 700 feet. I don't think that is good planning policy to look at lots, that differently. Like there has to be some consistent way of measuring lot frontage, and the municipality certainly was doing it that way. I don't understand the recent reason for the change.
Okay, so thank you, Christine, for bringing that, clear or issue forward. And so that we will be discussing that at our next council meeting, and we'll get some further clarification and information from Jeff on that and discuss that at the time. So I think just in matter of time, we did say approximately 5 minutes per presentation, and this is just the beginning public open house. So if that's okay, Christine, hope you stay on the line and listen to the rest of the presentations. I am going to ask Danielle if she can bring the next presenter, which is Stephen Wolf. I'll just wait till he comes on into the meeting. Technology is an amazing thing. Who knew that we'd be all Zooming? Yeah. And again, councillors, and on the agenda, you should have read his written submission. Does he need to unmute himself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Stephen. So welcome, and we have your written submission. So go ahead and have your oral time.
Okay. My name's Stephen Wolf. I live at 1497 Eagle Lake Road. I'd like to discuss industrial firewood cutting operations on Rural 1 zones and the comprehensive zoning bylaw 9.1 permitted uses for a Rural 1 zone. It lists as a permitted use, forestry use, excluding a forest products mill. These operations have grown from a Briggs & Stratton wood splitter to industrial diesel-powered log processors. There are logging trucks coming and going. There are several pieces of heavy-duty diesel equipment used to remove logs from the mountains that are piled up, as well as to move the logs to the mill and move the piles of firewood to be loaded for delivery. The diesel log cutter / splitter can process entire logs, and of course, all the equipment is diesel powered and therefore noisy. I do not think that industrial operations and the noise they produce should be permitted on Rural 1 properties as they abut rural residential properties. Some forest products mills, such as a sawmill, will produce lumber for construction, but in this case, the mill is producing firewood. The logs are being brought by truck to both types of mills after harvesting off premise and then are manufactured into a forestry product. Heavy equipment is needed at both type of mills to handle the logs. And unlike a forestry operation, which moves through a property and as the trees are harvested and terminates when the logs are taken, a mill remains in one location and therefore so does the noise. Both type of mills will process whole logs, but one mill is producing 2x4s while the other is producing firewood. They are both forest products mills as far as I can see, and the bylaw doesn't say sawmills, but rather forest products mills. It's up to the council, of course, to determine if these operations conform to the existing bylaw. The bylaws, like permitted uses, also permits a gravel pit on rural 1 zones, but in my opinion, no heavy-duty industrial operations ought to be permitted on land that abuts a residential property. That's what I'd like to say.
Okay, well, thank you for both the written and oral submission. So I'm going to turn it back to Jeff just to see if he wants to have any comment, and then again we'll open it up to councillors to see if there's any further clarification on your submission.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Stephen, for your presentation. Staff are of the opinion that the rural type 1 zone is the appropriate zone for this type of activity. The RU1 zone, which is our most rural zone, already permits similar activities such as farming and pits and quarries and forestry, which use heavy equipment and other similar type equipment. I do seek direction from council whether they wish to create provisions for firewood cutting operations that might mitigate the impact on residential zones, because I think that's the issue here. It's not necessarily the zone, it's that it's adjacent to residential uses. If council chooses to implement these types of provisions, staff request a bit of direction as to what zones they would like these types of uses in. But currently, I think the rural type 1 zone is the appropriate for this. There are mitigation measures that can be put into a bylaw to reduce the impacts of noise and dust and trucks, and can be accomplished with definitions and provisions. I question whether it's necessary, but I do seek direction from council with that regard.
Okay, and I see a question from Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeff, for like the RU1 zones, that's usually a property of about a minimum 50-acre size. Are there any current regulations around distance? Let's say if where you've got an RU1 property butting on a let's say a rural residential, is there anything that defines how far, what the setbacks should be if they are doing any kind of processing or mill type of activity on an RU1 property?
Thanks, Larry. Great question. Not currently. So our bylaw setbacks typically apply to structures as opposed to uses. So yeah, not right now.
Okay. Any other questions or comment, Councillor Smith?
Jeff, is it correct that a sawmill producing 2x4s, to use Stephen's example, would that be permitted in an RU1?
No, it would not.
All right, so we do distinguish between producing lumber, if you like, versus firewood. And what would be the rationale for that?
So when this matter was last brought to council a few years ago, staff did some research and looked up the definition of mill, and the most predominant definition we found said that a mill typically included work inside a structure. So yeah, that's why we did not include that as a mill.
Yeah.
Pardon me? Oh, Councillor Clark again?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff, a portable sawmill, and then what you're saying, for that to be not allowed, would have to be placed within a structure, but to set up a portable sawmill in an open space would be permitted by the sounds of it. at least based on what you've just described. Is that right?
Correct. So if someone had their own planer, I suppose they could take the planer out and plop it in the middle of their yard and start planing some trees that they fell. Same with firewood splitting. They could bring in one of those processors or chainsaws and cut up their wood on their property using a wood splitter and stuff, as long as it wasn't inside a structure.
Can I speak?
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
If it was actually inside a structure, the noise would probably be reduced, if anything. Perhaps like what Jeff was saying, we could have setbacks where if you have these big RU1 properties, why not have the operation at the far end of the RU1 properties as far away from the residential as possible, and if possible, surrounded by forest to help cut the noise, and perhaps have it enclosed to also cut the noise. That would probably help. Just a thought.
Okay, certainly setbacks. I don't know about building, requiring people to build structures, because that might not, I don't know. Councillor Smith?
I mean, it's certainly an interesting point that gets raised here, and the example of inside a structure seems to suggest that if I did this inside my garage, it would be a sawmill. But if I take it outside of my garage, it's permitted. And you know, when we move away from what I'll call the hobby level, you know, it's common for many of us to get a chainsaw out a couple of times a year and spend a couple of hours producing some firewood for our own use. But when we get into you know, business enterprises that employ people and that are operating you know, 5 days a week, 8 or more hours a day, you know, the level of noise can become a concern. And so I'd certainly be interested in you know, getting some type of report from staff in terms of you know, some directions, some alternatives here that might help us you know, deal with the kind of concern that Stephen has raised.
Is that okay, Jeff? You can.
Yes, of course. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just writing down right now.
Okay, me too. I know it's hard to write and talk and listen all at the same time. But so I think that from Councillor Smith is the differentiation between a commercial enterprise and an individual who gets a load of logs and cuts them up for his personal use.
Yep. So yeah, just to clarify, so the difference between a commercial operation or an industrial operation versus someone doing it personally.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, but also there are other permitted uses within these zones, such as you said, pits and quarries. So that is an often that can also be abutting a residential somewhere, somehow. The different zones, you know, if you're right on the line of one zone to another zone, that can happen as well. So, you know, what else is permitted in there, because we don't want to discriminate a bit against one kind of use when the other kind of use is equal in noise or other impacts to the other residents, if you know what I mean. So one idea has been about setbacks, one idea has been defining commercial enterprises. So I think we've heard lots on that, and we understand your position, Mr. Wolf. So thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you,
Yep.
Mayor and councillors.
Great. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is ask Danielle to bring our next presenter, which is Angel Taylor. And hello, Angel, and you'll be coming in just a minute, and I believe you're just on the phone. Oh, your video, very good. Okay, I will see you in a second. And I know I served on Harvest Halliburton as a Dysart rep for some time, and this has been an idea that's been long in the making, isn't it?
It is. Can you hear me?
I can, Angel.
Okay, great. So I start my video. Good afternoon, Mayor Roberts, counselors, staff, and members of the public. I'm Angel Taylor, a longtime member of Harvest Halliburton. And I'm here to talk about our recommendation and rationale for advocating for backyard hens. I believe the policy statement provincially back in 2014 still has merit. And this statement talked about the importance of providing opportunities to support local food, and that this does contribute to economic prosperity. Next slide, please. Good. So let me tell you a little bit about us. We've been around for a long time. In fact, our predecessor organization, the Local Food Coalition, was a lead hand in founding the farmers market back in the day. It started out as a grassroots advocacy for local food. Many of the people on it initially were consumers. As it has grown, we have articulated a mandate to raise awareness about the benefits of a sustainable local food system. We promote and support policies for the development of same. We have key stakeholder representation, including members from every municipal council. And other groups would be, for instance, the Halliburton County Farmers Association, the Farmers Market, Abbey Gardens, and others. We conducted a community food assessment a few years ago that actually gained provincial recognition for its thoroughness, quality, and rigor. And out of this, moving to the next slide, one of our many recommendations is that backyard chickens be permitted in residential and rural residential zones. It's well documented the backyard chickens contribute to improvements in food security, social well-being. Believe it or not, some people have hens as animal supports in the way you might have a dog or a cat. In this case, though, we're looking for eggs. We're looking, and especially during COVID, there has been an incredible increase documented here and very widely of people seeking fresh, safe, local food. As a person who keeps a larger flock, I can tell you chickens were sold out across the province. They are nowhere to be found. People want to avoid grocery stores and they want safe food. It improves food literacy. It's good for the environment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh my God.
No, we can hear you.
I suddenly thought I'd.
No.
Okay. Hens are great recyclers. They eat bugs, garden pests, chicken scraps, grass clippings, reduce the need for pesticides. When we're putting in our garden, we let our hens into the garden. They scratch, they're companionable. They're great to have there. They have high quality manure and produce excellent eggs. And if you look at this little box I have here, hens on grass have more hens raised on grass produce eggs with more vitamin D, less cholesterol, more vitamin A, less saturated fat, more omega-3, and more vitamin E. If you've bought or eaten a farm fresh egg, you've probably remarked on the beautiful orange color of the yolk instead of that pallid, sickly, whitish, barely yellow yolk from those who are raised in batteries. Next slide, please. So a few years ago, I did research, which I've continued doing, on what's happening around the province. Highlands East is permitting 3 in residential zones for some time. Lake of Bays and Huntsville are permitting 5 hens in 0.4 hectares, 10 in lots over 0.4, and Huntsville 6 and 12 respectively, looking at those same lots sizes. Bracebridge, Severn, Peterborough, Kingston, Guelph, Toronto, Kitchener, and more have all introduced backyard hens. And I will add, our neighbors to the south, New York City, for example, permits backyard hens. Some of the typical rules, while there are variations across jurisdictions, generally planners specify that the animals be housed and fenced in accordance with good animal husbandry recommendations. No roosters, even though hearing a rooster crow may have a little charm, it stops being charming at 5 in the morning. Compost, that people compost the manure, the setbacks from property lines are specified. They're not kept right near or beside dug wells. Dr. Peter Doris of OMAFRA comments that the nitrogen and phosphorus in chicken droppings is not a worry with a small number of hens, and that indeed 4 hens produced approximately the same amount of poop, sorry, this is part of the presentation, as does a middle-sized dog. And you don't want to, the chicken droppings are useful in the garden, so they have other applications. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I ask you to think, which eggs would you choose? The ones from a battery hen who never sees the outdoors, eats grass, never eats grass, lives on a wire mesh and lays her egg onto a conveyor belt and spends her short life in the conditions you see vis-a-vis these other hens. Those are healthy eggs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angel, for your presentation and for all your hard work, not just for today's presentation, but I know for years and years on this issue. And as you can see in the proposed amendments, we do have that included. And now I just was trying to quickly read and listen to your presentation at the same time. We have not limited to the number of hens, I believe. We just have the size of the coop and then where they can be. In terms of the setbacks, etc. We do also have no roosters. So I'm going to turn over to Jeff and see if there's anything he wants to clarify and what he has put in, and then we'll have a conversation. So Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you, Angel. And just to reiterate, Harvest Albertan first came forward with this recommendation at the time of our official plan review. And at that time, Council agreed to implement provisions for urban agriculture in our official plan. So this is actually just bringing this, along with urban agriculture, just bringing our zoning bylaw into conformance with our official plan. So This is required. Council can still limit the types and location of hens in urban agriculture, but it is required within our zoning bylaw. So it's just something for council to think about. But thank you, Angel.
Through the chair, may I make a rejoinder to Jeff?
Please.
For your information, Jeff, I do have a body of research presented in a grid that shows the specs of different jurisdictions, maybe 10, 15 or so. I'd be happy to send that over if it would be of any use.
I would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and pardon me, it is 4 hens. I didn't realize that we had the number in there. I was, like I say, quickly trying to review this. We do not have anything in here as a recommendation about good husbandry, and I don't know if that's something we put in there, Jeff, as was outlined in her presentation. For instance, for the care and protection of the animal.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think I would want to see maybe something in there in accordance with and take the verbiage out of the presentation. Or maybe Angel, you can pass on what that is. And then that would be
Sure.
one.
I'd be happy to, and that's important.
I think so. And also that no sale, this is for personal use. Jeff?
And if I could just clarify, in the provisions, we do add provisions, for minimum size for both hen coops and hen runs per hen. But the last provision does say that hen coops and hen runs shall be maintained in a clean condition, and the coops shall be kept free of obnoxious odors, substances, and vermin. So we do have something in there right now, but I do look forward to see what Angel provides me within that grid, because it might help us clarify and create some better wording.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to look to councillors to see if they have some comments. 2 thumbs up from Councillor Clark, who's our member of On Harvest Halliburton, so thank you. Okay, and you know what, Angel, with COVID and people wanting to have a local supply of food, I personally am not going to have any chickens in my backyard, but I love to purchase farm fresh eggs locally here. So that's this is a great step.
Great.
Okay, no other questions. We will move on to the next presenter, which is Darlene Moir. And we're just going to bring you into the meeting, Darlene. And we have a presentation, I believe, versus this is Darlene's on the same subject.
Hi. Sorry, I've had to switch the phone.
That's okay.
This noise will go away in just a moment.
All right, we will bear with you.
Okay, so first of all, hello everyone. It's great that Halliburton's or the county's looking to.
Darlene, are you able to just stay still just for
Yeah, I can do that.
yeah, just so we don't hit. It's a little harder and choppy on the screen to.
Oh,
to see.
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's no, that's great. Okay, continue.
So it's a little off the cuff, unfortunately, now, but it's great the county's looking to be more self-reliant. I'm really excited about that and to have my own backyard chickens one day. Just want to mention that it does say that there's a limit of 4 hens right now in the zoning bylaw. Is my slide on projected?
We can. It will be. So just being coming, it was included in the package, so certainly all the councillors and anyone in the public could have seen it ahead of time. Yep, there we are.
Yeah, so we can just leave it on this first page here.
Okay.
So I was looking, I was thinking about how I would go through the backyard chickens and how they would apply to my property. And it's like, the way my property is laid out is it's like sideways. What you consider front and back in your zoning bylaw is logically the sides on my property, and my front and back is is the size in your zoning. So what it means is that the back of my property and the backs of my neighbors, they're all close together because the houses are right up against the back of the lot line. But the regulations right now say they should be, the chickens should be at the rear. So what I'm suggesting is that hen coops and hen runs should be located in a rear yard or a side yard of a lot and shall not be located in a yard that abuts a street. And where this is not possible, that should be concealed from view as much as possible. Do you have the same provision in 3N already in the zoning law? So this just makes it consistent. And that would allow me to move the chickens to a side part, which is far from all the neighbors. And the reason I want them away is because I'm concerned of maybe odors coming out of the chickens. So I just want them farther away from the neighbors than what the current wording would allow. So that's the intent of that one.
Okay.
For 3G, hen coos and hen runs shall not exceed a total combined ground floor area of 40 square meters. And this essentially comes down to, I want happy free range chickens. I think 10 square meters, it's 100 square feet, is the size of a bedroom. I think that's a bit too small. And 40 just puts the room, makes it a bit bigger. And that will allow them to move around and be happy. There's some nuance to it. You might want to put a maximum size on the chicken coop, but every hen run I've been in has been, none of them have been 10 square meters. They've always been larger than that. So I think that I'd like a larger one too. And my property is over 1 acre in size. I can support that, but I think that I shouldn't be limited by maybe smaller properties needing smaller sizes. And then for urban agriculture, I'm suggesting that the compost may only consist of plant-based and animal material. I'm adding animal because when I build compost, I want to layer it with plant stuff and then animal, which would be chicken manure in this case. So plant, animal, and I do that in the full sun. And that helps to build really good soil. It also allows me to dispose of the chicken manure in a way that's useful. And then my final suggestion was 3. I'm actually adding a new point.
Okay.
When urban agriculture is in use, the total accessory buildings increases by 2. And that might be due to confusion on my part, but like it seems to me a chicken coop would count as an accessory building, especially when it's weatherproofed and heated and maybe even gets power at that point. So like if I have a shed dedicated to agricultural use or a chicken coop or greenhouse or like, I think these might count towards that. And I have an urban residential lot, R1. And the existing accessory buildings on it, I already have 2. I don't want to lose them.
Okay.
Because I need them for the urban use, like a
Sure.
like a bunkie, the shed, but now also maybe a chicken coop and a greenhouse. So I'm thinking that it might count as accessory buildings, and I just want to allow that if it's being with the intent that it's being used for urban agricultural purposes. So those are my suggestions. Thank you, everyone.
No, thank you. And you bring some very good points. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. And maybe we will start with the first point, which is we'd say in the rear lot. I assume it sounds like that your dwelling is in the rear lot so that you don't have enough space in the rear. The dwelling sits at the back end of your property as opposed to the street end.
Yeah, it's a tiny rear lot and it's all front lot.
Right, so it's
Front
still
yard.
an acre, but the dwelling itself is to the very back. So I don't know if this is something that could be accomplished through a minor variance, or is it something that we can put where this is not possible in use. So Jeff, I'll ask you about that one.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Darlene. It looks beautiful out there today. And I will admit, I did review numerous bylaws and documents when preparing these provisions, and I'll admit I did err on the conservative side of everything with these provisions. with the intent of trying to balance in-town living with these new uses. Having said that, I'm still of the opinion, due to impacts on neighboring properties, that hen coops and hen runs should be located in the rear yard, where there are greater setbacks and less visibility. The provision you're proposing does suggest maybe side yards as an alternative, but it also suggests, if that's not possible, that they just need to be screened. So that's also just suggesting that they could be located in the front yard. So I'm of the opinion they should still be try to be located in the rear yard. I did look where your property was, and it does seem to be a bit of a unique situation because most urban and suburban properties mostly front on the street and have that more room in the backyard as opposed to the front yard. With regards to the size, the 10 square meters, which is about 108 square feet, again, I did err on the conservative size. We are talking about, it goes with the number of buildings too. We're just talking about 4 hens here. So I just want to be careful there. And I go back to the intent being to balance the property interests of people who do want backyard hens and urban agriculture and those who don't. So I should note that options are available, as the mayor mentioned, to property owners where these provisions don't apply. There are such things as variances. I do understand it's an approval process, but when we are trying to draft provisions, we're trying to look at majority of properties when we're considering how to create the provisions. I certainly do seek direction from council with regards to the size and location of hen coops. I'll admit I am definitely not a pro when it comes to something like this. And Darlene, you probably know a lot more about it than me, and so does Angel. So I certainly look to council for direction on this.
Okay, and we did bring Angel back in. You're muted. Just one sec, Angel, because I know you want to make a point on this. And I'd hate to set something up and limit somebody that they couldn't have it and had to go through an approval process through the minor variance, like that we say that this is where it should be in the event that it can't beat there and meet setback. Similar, I would be open, and I think we should have a council discussion about this suggestion from Darlene, which is where it is not possible to somehow implement that. So anyway, we'll hear from councillors, but Angel's been brought back into the meeting because we'd like to hear what you have to say.
If I could, through the chair, briefly reply. I understand Darlene's concerns, but I think there is a resolution to a degree, i.e. to the issue of a very large space. One of the recommended methodologies is having a small house on wheels. You move it, it gives the hens fresh pasture, fresh grass. Anyone who's looked at a long-standing hen pen knows it turns to dirt rather quickly. If the hens are there permanently. A small number lend themselves to this portable method. Where it's placed, it can be, that's going to be guided to a degree by you, Jeff, and what setbacks are specified. But if I was in a residential area on a small lot, I'd sure have hens, and I'd have them in a portable coop that gives them access to new patches of grass, new bugs, and you get away from that huge brown area that the hens will create.
Okay, thank you, Angel. That's excellent. Any councillors have some questions or comments? No. And then I would also want to just hear from our chief building official in terms of the definition of an accessory structure, because a woodshed is an accessory structure. You're not living in it, you're not doing anything in it, but it is got a roof on it. So we need to hear On that point, if we want to exempt a chicken coop as being an accessory structure, I'd want to hear from Carl. Jeff?
And if it helps, I can answer that question, Andrea. Any structure is considered an accessory structure. Internally, we do provide some flexible interpretation of that. But yeah, any structures associated with this use would be considered an accessory structure. In the urban residential type 1, 2, and 3 zones, you are permitted 2 structures. So you could have a garage and a shed. Internally, we always like to, and I leave it up to council to decide, but we always encourage people to plan how they do things. You can attach certain structures to other structures. That may not satisfy Angel's recommendation of a portable structure. So that's what the current permissions allow, is 2 accessory structures, and that would include not necessarily the hen run, but it would include the hen coop.
Okay, so that's again something for council too, but I do want to hear from Carl, and I mean, it's a structure, so then do we say that it is exempt, or do we just say no, it counts as 1, and if they need a minor variance to ask to permit a 3rd, then they have to go through that route. Councillor Deputy Kennedy, did you have?
No, just I'd like to explore further that portable coop option as far as is that a structure? And also concerns about, do we really have to go through the minor variance procedure if a unique lot such as Darlene's presents itself? Maybe there's some kind of built-in that staff can have a look at and make a decision or a recommendation to council. Otherwise, I think in this day and age, urban agriculture is a thing that's growing, and maybe we have to grow with it as far as accessory structures and that type of thing. So I'm looking forward to a wholesome discussion at the end of the month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's no further questions, we will move on from the side yard. We'll see where we end up with the hens. We're going around the yard. Anyway, thank you, Angel. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next presenter is Peter DeLulio, and he'll be brought into the meeting. And just give us a minute to do that. Okay, hello, Peter.
Hello, Mayor Roberts.
Hello. Okay, so we do have your presentation included, but if you'd like to go through it with us and your rationale and what you're looking for.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Roberts, members of council, staff, and other Zoomers, I guess. Just one correction that Catherine Gonson and her husband, I'm representing them. I actually work with Carl at their firm. Just that it's Drag Lake Lodge, not resort. And first off, I'd like to thank Jeff for making the quick correction to the online map for the zoning of their property, which they just went through in 2017. He indicated that his hard copy was correct, but the map online was not correct. So thank you for getting that updated quickly. Now you just have to work on the text part. In terms of the definitions, I obviously work in the Hamilton, Burlington area, and the city of Hamilton has 7 bylaws, and none of those bylaws has a definition of attached. Burlington doesn't. Town of Oakville has 2 bylaws. They don't have a definition of attached. City of Toronto doesn't. Milton doesn't. So I've looked at 13 bylaws. There's no bylaw that has a definition of attached. I'm not sure the reason for it. Typically, a lot of times, you just take on the dictionary meaning of attached if you don't want to define it. Regards to the private cabin, as you know, the Drag Lake Lodge has a number of cabins, and so the client wants to have a closer look at that, and in particular with respect to decks and patios now, which I just discovered on our latest spreadsheet that Jeff prepared, was added as another item to be included in various definitions. So we need more time to look at their property and see the implications of not perhaps allowing encroachment of a deck in the side yard, which is it takes on the same setback as the main building. So again, that's a bit of a concern right now, given that the property is fairly large, and we just have to have a closer look where everything's situated.
Yeah.
And they raised a concern, I guess, in the area of Drag Lake Lodge. There's a number of active pits and quarries, and I don't know if any of them are expired or if their licenses have expired, and if they have, then obviously take away that zoning on those properties. And the other concern was with the minimum lot area for the rural RU1 zone. I know it's 20 hectares in the OP, but they've expressed a concern for that as well. That is all I have, and I'd be open to any questions or clarifications on any of my comments.
Okay, well, I just, you went through the definition of attached, but you have a couple other bullet points in your presentation that say revising the definition of home industry. Can you explain?
Oh, sorry. In those, I just was highlighting that they revised the definition of that actual
section. Okay, I thought you had comment.
Yeah, I should have changed the wording on that a bit.
No, I thought you had comment on that you wanted to us to add something else to that. And also, it appears we do have the possibility. It's in the draft for public comment about incline elevators. I have a comment later for Jeff on that one as a permitted use in the water setback. One of my recommendations is that it only be permitted where certain slopes make it not possible to get down to the water in another path. So I don't know what the percentage is or how that gets defined. We recently did allow one, but that was through a minor variance. So this way it would be permitted in the zoning bylaw, but I'd like to see with some parameters so that they aren't just popping up wherever. So I don't know what the rest of council think about that, or if that's the time to discuss that. But Jeff, do you have any comments for Mr. Delulio's?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. DeUlio, and thank you for providing us the proper pronunciation of your name. And I do thank you for bringing that to our attention, that the sections of the bylaw were not correct. So we have since updated the bylaw and the maps, and yeah, we thank you. I'm just going to try and go through the list of items you mentioned here. With regards to attached, yeah, it wasn't that easy coming up with the definition. The reason for that definition is we've had a lot of developers trying to navigate the zoning bylaw. Let's just say to create certain types of dwellings that contain multiple dwelling units, not necessarily attached to the main dwelling, specifically using breezeways or walkways and stuff like that, whereas to another pod. One dwelling, multiple pods. So that's the reason for it. Private cabins, decks, patios with regards to the Drag Lake Lodge property. I think I might be able to help you there because that property or the remainder retained portion is still zoned tourist commercial. So that property does permit recreational camps and other tourist establishments. And those cabins on tourist camps aren't necessarily considered private cabins because private cabins are accessory to dwellings and not necessarily accessory to those other uses. So I think that's where your concern came from with regards to home industry, that private cabins couldn't be rented out as a home industry. Well, those uses aren't considered a home industry because it is that portion of the property is zoned tourist commercial. what was next?
So Jeff, just
Yes.
to interrupt you there, but if they change, and I can't remember through the land division committee, was there a recommendation or requirement to change the zoning? If it changes from tourist commercial, then that changes those cabins.
Correct. And while the subdivision process isn't quite complete yet, the zoning process has been completed.
Okay.
So the waterfront properties, I believe there's 5 properties, have been rezoned to some sort of waterfront residential type zone or exception zone. But the rear property along Murray's Road is still zoned tourist commercial.
Okay.
And so can still have that that tourist camp or that recreational camp. With regards to your comments for pits and quarries, during this process, staff have reached out to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to ensure that our extractive industrial layer does match up with their pit licenses. I have received comment from the ministry that there have been some minor changes with the adjustment of the license boundary, and there are currently a few pits that that are in the process of rehabilitation, but that all the pit licenses are still the same from the last time we updated them. So that's something we always look at every time we go through this process, and we have been advised from the ministry that what we have is correct. With regards to rural 1 lot areas, this is something I hear quite a bit, and I do look to council for direction on this because the rural type 1 minimum lot area requirements are currently just under 50 acres. My response usually to that is I can't remember the last time someone's tried to create a brand new rural type 1 lot. There are numerous rural type 1 zoned properties out there that are far less than the 50 acres. That requirement only comes into place when they're trying to create a new lot. So that's typically how I answer people, but I do defer that to council if they are looking at smaller requirements for those zones. Home industry, I believe I answered. And the last one, inclined elevators, and I'll let council discuss that. I'm usually of the same opinion of the mayor. The primary objective of our official plan is to try and have natural looking shorelines. I understand the use and the need for these in some instances, but I think the minor variance process allows staff to look at them on a case-by-case basis to ensure that they are screened and that there aren't any impacts and that are just not thrown up at random. So that's my opinion on those, and I do defer that to staff. I mean to council as well. And I think I've covered everything there. If I've missed anything, just let me know.
So Peter, do you have any comments before I see if councillors have comments?
No, I appreciate your time. Thank you, Jeff, for the clarification.
Great. And if there's anything further you want to add, we're like I say, it's just the beginning of the process. So
yes.
Any comments from councillors about the incline elevator? Do we want to see that it's not included in the in this zoning bylaw? And that a person would have to go through the minor variance, or do you want to see it included in the zoning bylaw and with restrictions? That does not have to be answered today, but that's what we need to be thinking about. Yeah. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, to support what both you and Jeff have been saying, I think they have to be looked at on an individual basis, again, based on what the shorelines are. I would not like to see just, a general approval for the process. We are trying to maintain natural shorelines as best we can, as much as we can. But not to say there's not lots that don't require them, but they have to be looked at on an individual basis.
So the individual basis means though, then at a minor variance, whereas actually my suggestion was that they be included in this bylaw, but with restrictions, so that a person wouldn't need to go and get the application process of the minor variance. That
would have to be looked at, I think, to see how well that works.
Yeah.
Sometimes those things can get bent or interpreted that may not provide the restrictions or at least the guidance that we would like to see. So I think that's going to have to need some more discussion.
Yep, absolutely. Jeff?
And I just wanted to provide a clarification for council that inclined elevators are currently permitted on properties. They're just not currently permitted within the water setback of it. That's where they're mostly required and needed, but they are permitted as long as they don't encroach into that setback.
Okay. So thank you on all that, Peter, and I appreciate your presentation today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
For part of the process. And lastly, we have Murray Ferry, who's coming in by phone, I believe, not video. So we'll just wait till you're online, which I believe you are now. And I think you submitted just yesterday, so I don't actually have a copy. So I'll just turn it over to you, Murray, and do your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Roberts, and I appreciate the time. By the way, I just want to say up front that this is not my idea. This comes from a number of property owners and other people in the industry.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to just summarize it because does the council not have a copy of this?
We do now. It's on our screen now.
Okay. So to sum it up, we're talking about largely the large lots on Percy and Halliburton Lake, who are anywhere from 150 to 250 meters on the shoreline. And the question becomes, they are not allowed any more buildings or any bigger buildings than somebody on a quarter of an acre. And I think there are safety precautions that can be included here that will actually make the water quality, in fact, better. Because on a quarter acre lot, you can have up to a 4,000 square foot house if you don't exceed the percentages on the lot, and a private cabin, and one tile bed. So what I'm proposing here is that the existing zoning stays in place, and that these people would have to come forward to, if they qualify, first of all, if they qualify, to go into a new zone, which is R7.
Okay.
And that would allow bigger buildings. And the main building, I should just go back and say that we have buildings right now that are 6,000 square feet in the township that have come way exceed the bylaw. But because they don't exceed the amount of land used in that particular lot, we give them the permit. So what I'm suggesting here is that we do something, I think 4,000 is the maximum now, Jeff, am I right about that? 4,000 square feet in the bylaw?
Yes, if I could clarify, so right now the way the bylaw reads is that the maximum gross floor area for any story of a building in the waterfront residential zones is 372 square meters, which is about 4,000 square feet. So that's per story. And that doesn't include a deck or a veranda, that doesn't include an attic, that doesn't include any part of the basement that's used for storage, heating, cooling, and it doesn't include any part of your private garage. So you can have a 4,000 square feet, not including all those portions of your building, plus another 4,000 feet on another story as well.
Okay, so that's an option. But if you don't want 4,000 feet on the second story, and you want to have 6,000, which we are getting some of now, you couldn't do it unless you had a bigger lot. So what I'm trying to think, does it make any sense to council and to you, Mayor Roberts, that you could have the same septic system sometimes for 4,000 square feet and a private cabin as you could for something that was on, say, an 800-foot frontage lot. So to summarize, what's happened here is, or what we're proposing is, you've got the existing zone. So these places now are zone WR5 or WR6. Mm-hmm. They'd be left that way. They'd have to make an application to a WR7, so you'd know the sizes, and that the second building on the lot be a maximum of 2,400 square feet, because right now it's 480. And it would have to. The big thing here is that it has to have a separate tile bed. So there'd be two tile beds instead of possibly one or one big one. and they have to have provision to add 2 additional tile beds should the need arise. So as a condition of the building permit for the second building, it has to be a 30-meter setback for the tile bed area. So I think it would accommodate some of those people who have spent mega bucks, would like to put a larger second building on the lot, because I know that the building department have conflicts all the time with somebody that's done a bunkie, and then they put the washroom in the top, and they do something else, and they're on one tile bed. And I think this would probably help the quality of the lake. The other thing that would happen here, that I know council's going to say, well, they're going to rent them. Well, the people that are on those big lots and can afford $700,000 or $800,000 for a lot, and maybe $2 million for a building, and then another $700,000 or $800,000 for a second building, are not likely to rent them. They're usually for their families or for their business or for some other reason. However, there's always the exception. So, and I think it says in the bylaw that the private cabin cannot be used for rental. Well, guess what? The rental agencies all count that as an extra bedroom. So that's not going to change. So I just like to leave it with you. I think there's an opportunity to do this in a very safe fashion, probably make it better for the lake, better for the property owner. For sure, it's going to increase taxation. It's going to, in my opinion, it's quite reasonable. And I'm not sure, I didn't check other bylaws, but perhaps Jeff can do that.
Sure.
I'm not sure every other townships all have the same size building for all the zones.
I'm not sure. I'll turn it over to Jeff. I just want to ask also, and we don't have our CBO Carl Korpela here with us today, that if we had someone who was building a building with the square footage of the main floor of
Right.
one floor more than 4,000 square feet, they would have to have had a minor variance. The way it's calculated, there's no way someone can have built a building in Dysart that is 5,000 square feet without that. I do believe we did have one recently, and it did have to go through the minor variance. So I'm going to ask Jeff to clarify on that, because our building, as Jeff said, all these other things are not part of it, whether they be the decks and whatnot. And you can have
Right.
4,000 on the one. Then you have a loft that's maybe 1,500 square feet, and you have a full finished basement that's another 3,000 square feet. So you're up to 8,000 square feet of living space, but the footprint isn't any bigger of the main dwelling. Again, it doesn't count garage, and it doesn't count decks. And so Jeff, if you want to just comment.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and I certainly can't speak to any specific properties because I'm not aware of those. But as I mentioned and Andrea mentioned, perhaps it does meet the 4,000 square foot requirement, and that the additional space is either storage or a three-car garage or something like that. I really can't speak to that, but that's what the bylaw currently states. With regards to a secondary building or a secondary dwelling on the property, it's currently permitted in our official plan in some areas and in our zoning bylaw in some zones, just not in any of the waterfront areas. So any change to accommodate this would require an official plan amendment. So it's certainly something for council to think about. And staff look for direction in that regard. One thing to keep in mind is with regards to the Ministry of Environment's lake capacity models for lake trout lakes. My understanding it is based upon one dwelling per lot. So if something like this was contemplated, we'd have to look at not only provincial policy, the county's official plan, but we'd also likely ask for a lake capacity study or a lake assessment to ensure that it wasn't affecting that lake capacity.
I think we know if the lakes are at capacity or not now, do we not?
We do have a table that says that, and as I said, that's based on one dwelling per lot. So if we started allowing two on a lot of properties, then it might throw that model off. So we'd have to go to the MOE just to notify
I
them.
just want to be clear that this is not a lot of lots that's going to do this. First of all, they got to jump a lot of hoops. These are only very large properties, and actually people that want to spend money in Halliburton and want to be able to come here and enjoy it with their families. You know, we've got sleeping cabins, and I've been involved with two of them here in the last few weeks that have they have a private cabin of 480 square feet, and they got plumbing downstairs, 2 bedrooms upstairs, and if we don't catch them, and we're not catching them, and they're on one tile bed on the lakes that, I'm sorry, they're only got a third of an acre. I think that's really dangerous, and we can't catch all those things. So I'm just trying to say maybe there's an alternative here. Use some common sense. If it requires all that, Jeff, then it's a complicated issue. I thought that you could put some provisions in zoning. I could be wrong. That
and I'm not saying, I'm just telling you what, it's certainly an interesting proposal, Maria, and I'm just telling you what the existing provisions say. So if that change was contemplated, those are the things we would have to look at.
Yeah, for sure. And I just have one or two comments, Mary Roberts, on yurts. I've got one. We don't have a size.
Murray, sorry, there's 3 questions from councillors on this issue. So why don't we just stay on this issue, and then you still got the floor.
Sorry, I thought. Okay.
No, that's okay, because I can see Councillor Clark.
Exciting, Andrea. I can hardly wait at all.
Okay, Councillor Clark. What?
Yeah, my concern is especially if we're talking about a larger secondary building, that these places would have to exclude any kind of kitchen or cooking facility. As soon as you go to that, you've got a whole new residence and requirement for division of the property, or where to shoot yourselves in the foot. And I'm well aware that some of these big places would love to have a second building with all the all the amenities to be almost like a second home, but that defeats the purpose of what we've been trying to do with some proper zoning and proper,
Don't you counter that with proper tile beds?
Not necessarily, Murray. The proper tile beds is something that's very, very important, and I think we are making headway in that, but we still got a ways to go. And that's the bigger issue there is around the number of bedrooms and the number of other laundry facilities and everything else that all impact that. And as the science comes out, that continually changes, and I think we've got to keep looking at updating that. But the issue I've seen in some other townships is somebody comes through and say, well, I want to build a new cottage on the property, but I want to keep my old one as well, so the family can stay there, including a full kitchen. And all of a sudden you've got 2 residential properties, not one. And just the headaches that creates is just amazing.
And, it can be dealt with. There's probably a way to do with it, but we just need to work out.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Kennedy.
Yeah, I just listening to Murray here, just thinking, so this is like Granny Flats on water, basically, is what we're talking about, a secondary dwelling. Yep. Maybe there's some, I'm not sure what the restrictions or what the things are with Granny Flats, but I think it's well worth maybe taking a closer look at this. We know there's already a number of, for lack of a better word, illegal secondary dwellings on a lot of cottages. So if there's,
I don't think you know anywhere close. I don't how many there are. There's hundreds of them.
But I think with the restrictions he's
proposed, we'll have plumbing and kitchens and everything else in these 2-story garages with they call it a private cabin. What they do is they get the building inspector out to look at it, then they put it in after he leaves. And you people don't have this. Nobody's fault. They don't have the staff to check it. But the point I'm making is they're on very small lots, closer to the water than these people are going to be, and they're on one septic system. And if we don't catch them, that's where things are going to go asunder here.
We did determine, though, that if someone builds a 2-story accessory structure garage, and it's bigger than a certain size, the upstairs will be considered private cabin, and they are not permitted to have bathrooms. But anyway, Jeff.
Well, I think that's a positive move for sure.
Yeah, we did that a while ago. Okay, Jeff has.
And if I could just mention one thing, so last year, the province came out with Bill 108, which is the More Homes and More Choices Act. Within
Right.
that act, there's requirements for municipalities to not only require secondary dwelling units, but third dwelling units on properties. We have not, our policy has not been updated to accommodate this yet. It's kind of trickling down from province to the county, to our OP, and then to our zoning bylaw. However, having said that, typically, even though second and third units are required, they have not been implemented in waterfront zones. But I can certainly look to see how other jurisdictions are doing it, whether other jurisdictions are allowing second dwelling units within the waterfront zone. But and just one other point to Pat's comment about granny flats or garden suites. They are permitted by our official plan, but they're designed to be temporary. So we do permit garden suites. They do have to go through zoning bylaw, a temporary zoning bylaw amendment for up to 20 years, site plan agreement. So it's not quite the same. But yeah, I can certainly look into what other jurisdictions are doing with regards to their second.
I'm aware of that legislation too. You're right, it hasn't been implemented in very many places yet, so it's, anyway, I put it out there and you can consider it, you can do whatever you like with it. That's what councils do.
Yes, and at our next council meeting, we'll have our chief building official maybe to talk about, I referred to the fact, I think there was one minor variance for a place that exceeded the 4,000 square feet. So I just want to know, is this something that is happening? We don't just change a zoning bylaw amendment for one request. As you know, it's got to be, you know, for the general public. Otherwise, it would stay as a minor variance type situation. But if there's
some steps through that are bigger than 4,000, to be honest with you, that didn't require a minor variance. But anyway.
Again, we'll talk to the chief building official. Councillor Smith had a question.
More of a comment, and it sounds like Jeff has committed to look at this and report back to council. And I just wanted to echo Pat Kennedy's observation that this is probably something that's worth looking into, with obvious restrictions around the the lot size, as has been noted. This would not apply to most lots in Dysart, but maybe there's a few dozen out there where it would make sense, and at least let's understand the implications. Certainly, the second septic system, tank and bed, would be quite a protective measure from the point of view of our lakes. And again, most properties wouldn't have the capacity to handle that. So, let's not just kind of toss it out. So, Jeff, I think reporting back on it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so Marie, you also want to talk about yurts?
Yeah, I do. Jeff, do we have a size? I know you've got them into the private cabins. That's 45 square meters, 480 square feet. Is there a size for yurts?
Yep, thank you, Murray. And the way I have the definition of yurt laid out, is that it's to take on the provisions for private cabins. So yurts are to be considered private cabins. So the provisions in section 3.1D, I believe it is, also apply to yurts. So they're limited to that 45 square meters. Setbacks, everything still apply, just as if it were a private cabin.
I think, have you done a lot of research on yurts?
I did a little bit of research. Most of the direction I put in this was direction provided from council that they didn't want them in the waterfront zone, and that they wanted them to be used for private cabins only. So that's kind of how I laid that out.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying that if you're going to allow them up to 480 square feet, the ones I've researched and done a little bit of work on, and I'm sure you have a 20-pound snow load. They would, and are we going to have to issue those a building permit the same as private cabins?
I defer that to Carl, but I assume so. Anything over 10 square meters requires a permit.
So they'd require an engineering drawing or a drawing?
I'll defer that to the chief building official, but I assume so, yes.
Well, I just think that I guess the buzzword is gamping, because they're this grand camping or whatever it is, that's what they're calling them. I thought the ones that I saw, and to say they're not going to be used for Airbnb, the whole thing on the webpage is that that's who's going to be using them. So I don't know how you're going to enforce some of these things. I thought when I first saw the thing in the official plan, I thought, well, maybe we're talking about those 10 by 20s or those small ones. I didn't think we were going to 450 square feet, but I'm asking council to think about that.
Okay.
Because there's a whole lot of issues around them. And I know it's a nice idea. The other thing I got to ask you, did you give any consideration to tiny houses or mobile homes? We've got a whole population up here now, and you know this, Mayor Roberts, and so does the council, that can't afford $1,500, $1,800 a month for rent. So we need to think ahead. What can we do for those in some rural areas? Can some of those things be developed? Because if we don't, we're leaving a whole lot of people behind here, and I just don't know what the answer to that is, but I'd sure like council to give us some consideration. It is a problem, I can tell you that.
Okay. Jeff, had you considered that or had any requests to include it? Council didn't ask for that, but.
I did not receive any request to review that during this process. Part of me thinks that that's something that might have to be reviewed during an official plan review. I'd have to go back and look at our policies a little closer. Yeah, I'll need a little bit more time to think about that, but no, I did not review whether tiny homes should be permitted.
What's the minimum size of a permanent dwelling?
In the waterfront residential zones, it's 600 square feet is minimum. In rural zones, it's 800 square feet.
800 square. That's a well, I know it's not considered what they call the tiny home. A lot of it is the servicing. I could see where if somebody wanted to do a development and all the properties were serviced on a communal sewer system, a lot of the restrictions end up coming from the fact that you still have to have a well and a septic. So you need a certain size lot to be able to do that. And then if you're going to do that, would you want to build less than an 800 square foot home? It's a bit of a.
Yeah, you're right. It's a bit of a question. The other thing I forgot to mention in there is that if you go to section 9 in the rural zones, there's a notation in there that says it's a permitted use in a principal residence. So does that mean that an ERC is a permitted use in a permanent residence? And this is talking about private cabins. The problem is you put private cabins and ERCs together, people are going to interpret this. And Andrew, you've been there long enough to know that it doesn't take much for somebody to challenge you.
Oh, yeah. That's why we only do this every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. But in between, we have been challenged, as you know.
Absolutely. That's why we try to get it right and try to get it to what the needs of our particular community. That's the key is getting it right. So
and not always complaint driven things are what to look at. We need to be proactive here. The other thing I was going to say is I'm going to talk a little bit about backyard hens. Is that allowed in every rural zone?
The backyard hens are proposed for in town. So the urban residential zone, the suburban residential zones. Currently in our rural residential zones and our rural zones, we permit farming. So they can have more than 4 hens. They can have as many as they want.
So what's the minimum, how many square feet is the hen? I call it the hen pen, but that's an old saying.
Let me just go to my provisions here for a quick second. So what the provisions say is that the hen coops need at least 4 square feet per hen. The hen runs need at least 10 square feet per hen. And then the total combined 108 square feet between the hen coop and the hen run.
Well, I think it's what's happening, and it's a good idea. We've come a long way. We used to have cows and horses on the main street. But I can tell you this, that every one of those places is probably going to require a fence. So just so you have a heads up on that, because you can't keep raccoons from killing chickens. And there's lots of them in Halliburton. I see them crossing the road all the time. And of course, fox or any other animal are going to kill them if they're not in the fence, if they're just running in the yard. So I just know that you're going to get a lot of fences, whether there's any conditions on what kind of fence, whether they're chain link or what they are. I'm just telling you, I think that's going to happen, and it's nice to get your head up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I look at the definition, sorry, I'm just flipping through my papers here for the definition of a hen coop. It's a fully enclosed weatherproof building where hens are kept.
Yeah.
And the hen run should be a covered, secure enclosure.
Okay.
So to me, the definition provides that they are to be enclosed.
If it's enclosed, does it have a roof then?
I
Yes.
think it's a roof or a wall. Let me look at my definition. Having one or more walls and or a roof. So they don't necessarily have to have a roof. For the hen run, the hen coop is a fully enclosed weatherproof building. I'd have to, and I'll have to look into it a little bit closer, and see if that's something council wants. If they want the hen coop to be fully enclosed, walled and roofed, and same for the hen run.
And as you know, some of those lots are 50 and 60 feet in town, so they may not be able to do it, but anyway.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not going to, but that'll be I'd rather just go find some farm fresh eggs somewhere.
Can you have them in Helbium, by the way?
I don't know if my neighborhood would let me, but yes, I could if this passes. So thank you for your submission and all your comments. And I think some of the things we will make sure Jeff has taken note that some of the questions will have to go to Carl. So we'll want him in, particularly with the request to expand the square footage of the main floor and the accessory structures to the hen coop. Is that an accessory part, one of the accessory structures and whatnot? So we do have some people that have been listening on the phone, but that did not have formal presentations listed. But this is your opportunity to now to just hit your little chat box, and our administrator Danielle will see if you want to participate, say anything.
We do have Laura Payne on. She had some questions about section 5.1.
Okay, Laura, so you're live, so go ahead.
Hi, thanks. It's been very interesting listening in. So my question about section 5.1. So and maybe I'm an outlier, but I am a member of a family with a lot in a WR4L zone. I think I got the letters in the right order, and have interest in using a yurt as a private cabin. And really, you know, it's exactly what a private cabin should be. It's just overflow sleeping space and so on. With the way it's listed out in table 5.1, it is unclear to me whether, because we're treating yurts as a part of the private cabin definition, we're aligning it to the private cabin definition, whether that would be still a way that it could be used in a WR4L zone, or whether that is meant to now exclude yurts from being used as private cabins in those zones.
Jeff, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Laura. I'm just, if you allow me a second to flip through my paperwork here.
No problem.
Correct. So as per the proposed provisions, yurts are only being proposed as permitted uses in the rural zone and all the rural zones and the rural residential zone. So yurts are not permitted in the waterfront residential zones, even as a private cabin.
And what's the rationale for that?
That was direction provided to staff from council, which was the basis for that provision.
Okay, is there, I mean, do counselors on the line maybe? Is there an opportunity to hear that? And the reason is because as somebody who is just, you know, looking for efficient and in aesthetically unique ways to have private cabin in that, you know, waterfront setting, you know, we're not trying to set up an Airbnb. We just, you know, would like to sleep in something that's comfortable and so on. That's where we're trying to understand why yurts are being called out specifically as an unacceptable format when all things else about yurts are being treated as private cabins.
Does any councillors want to comment on that, particularly those that live on the lake and are members of lake associations? Councillor Smith?
Not to offer a definitive view, but I guess as someone who brought forward the topic of yurt about a year ago, was the result of some complaints about a yurt that had been erected up at Kinesis and was advertised on Airbnb for rental purposes. So you know, we were concerned about that, and in fact, as it was investigated, it was determined that it wasn't permitted. If that situation that drove the staff decision to, or the staff recommendation to prohibit yurts on waterfront properties, I'm not sure, but that's just a piece of background on yurts, as I said, from about a year back.
And that absolutely makes sense. I mean, you're not interested in having this explosion of inappropriate rental properties, but I don't know that a yurt specifically is the path to that. You know?
Well, you brought up a really good point, Laura, and that's something we will discuss at our next council meeting and see if that is something that we want. They, like, as you just pointed out, they're considered a private cabin in every other way except not in the waterfront zone. So we'll throw that on the table for discussion. Councillor Clark has a question.
Yeah, well, just to continue with the yurt question, I would imagine that through committee of adjustment, there would be facility to consider a yurt on a waterfront residential. As if somebody went to committee of adjustment and, you know, and asked for permission and they were granted leave to install a yurt on a waterfront residential property, that would be permitted.
In my opinion, I think the avenue or the approval for that would be a zoning bylaw amendment, because we're dealing with a use and not necessarily a provision. It's kind of a technicality, because private cabins are permitted in the waterfront residential zone, and yurts are supposed to take on those provisions. I would have to think about that a bit more, but my inclination is it would be a zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay.
Like I said, so we're not making decisions today. It's just for, oh, let's research this a little bit more. And so you've just given us food for thought. Councillor Smith, you have one more point, and then I know there's other people on the line. I just want to check in with them.
Just going to say that, you know, obviously we'll talk about an upcoming council meeting, but a concern is anything that eases the process and the expense related to throwing up a private cabin, you know, on any property, but particularly the waterfront properties where we're so sensitive to the septic overloading those. And we're learning today through the septic inspection process that a lot of people have thrown up these private cabins and not, you know, gotten the appropriate permits and upgraded their septic capacity. And so if we make that easier and cheaper in terms of, oh, well, everybody will throw up a yurt and we'll be overloading septic systems. So that would be, you know, a reason for caution in my mind.
Yes, good point. So thank you, Laura, for bringing that forward. And I just want to check with Danielle, is there anyone else that is listening at this point on the phone that wanted to have a question or comment?
I don't see any, but Anna Tillman, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Anna.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So you have the floor.
Okay, I have the floor. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I'm coming on late because I did not get official notice of this. So we hope that's been corrected now. I'm president of the Percy Lake Ratepayers Association, and a lot of these issues are of concern here. So I'm going to start off with the best I can, and that's why I don't have a written submission. I'll start off with the cabins. I'm shocked at what is being allowed or not, because when we start talking about cabins, sleep-in cabins, we don't know how many people are actually in there. And that affects the use. If there is plumbing there, that affects the ability of what do you do with the waste that's produced. And that's just a washroom. I'm not talking about a kitchen. So there seems to be no kind of control or understanding about the capacity and the load that would be delivered as a result of these extra facilities. If they are, which they are, permitted up to a certain size, then I agree with Murray's consideration that you will need either a separate septic system or so, if the property can support that. And by support it, if the lake as a whole can support all these excessive septic systems. Years ago when we built our place, I think we had to specify how many people would be in the cottage. And I can't remember if that has stopped or so, and therefore we were limited to how many bathrooms we could have.
Yeah, so that's by bedrooms, and bedrooms they assume are, I think, up to 2 people to a bedroom. So if you build a 3-bedroom home, it would be, then they are going to make an assumption that there's 6 people will be sleeping there.
Well, so when it comes to hearing about these other facilities on the same lot as a quote cottage, we don't know how many people might be in a bunkie, do we?
Yeah, we assume 2 in a bedroom, Jeff.
Assuming, but it may not be the case.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and then even though some of these places may not be rented out, others can be, and that's private rentals, of which you have no control. So, I mean, that's an issue too to consider. So I'd like to see more done on strengthening what these outdoor these bunkies or whatever you want to call them, have, what they're permitted as a whole for the structure, and if they would then require a septic system, provided that the capacity is there to have one.
Okay.
Because that's their issue. Now, that's one item. So I've dealt with that.
Jeff would like to comment on that item before you move on to the next item, if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, Jeff?
Thank you, Anna. And I just want to clarify, so private cabins, they do require building permits, which do require building plans. So when they submit building permits, they are supposed to show how these buildings are laid out, which will help. And I should also back up a bit. Before you can get a building permit for a private cabin, you do require septic approval. So when they show their building plans, they're going to have to show how many buildings there are and make sure that the septic has the capacity to handle that additional development. With regards to rentals and people converting these buildings after they've been given building approval, I think we're all aware that that happens. With regards to rentals, we've updated our private cabin definition just to say that they can't be used for rent. We've also clarified the definition of private cabin to clarify the intended use as overflow sleeping and accommodation, whereas before it started, we've had instances where they were starting to say woodworking was a private cabin or all sorts of studios and stuff. So we're trying to regulate that. With regards to rentals, they're not supposed to have a kitchen in a private cabin. So my guess is if they are being used as rentals, there's some sort of cooking facilities. So I think it might come down to enforcement and the municipality being made aware of these. But I just wanted to advise you, yeah, if the building permit is built legally, they are supposed to get a building permit and septic approval so that we do know what size it is.
Yeah, and I hope you've got the capacity to do the inspections that are going to be needed to be done in many of these cases. Mm-hmm. Because I think there's a growing trend, especially right now, investment in these properties is seen as something worth doing right now. And I wonder if for the town or the municipality to have the capacity to check on what's going on. I think that's really important. So my concern is you may not know they can put a washroom in. You don't know that it's there. You won't know necessarily. And again, the septic systems. Let's say somebody's put a septic system on their property years ago, and then they build something. Would they then have to have that septic system reappraised before they're allowed to build?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Yes,
there
absolutely.
a-
Yes, we have the capacity, Anna. So
Okay.
as Jeff said, like we have a full building department and they, we've expanded in that area is to make sure that we do have the appropriate staff. So as Jeff pointed out, if someone, what we can't do, and it doesn't matter with anything, is unless it's a complaint driven, if someone has applied for something and then there's a different use, or if someone's using a den as a bedroom, if someone did an addition, if you can believe it, without a building permit, how would we know? So we only know what we know, and we do have capacity to follow up and ensure the septic meets the requirement for the number of people that are supposed to be using the property.
But at the present, and just remind me, is there a mandatory inspection of, I know this has been talked about, of septics in general, a mandatory period in which septics need to be inspected? Has Halliburton gotten into that?
We started and we did area 1, and Councillor Smith is laughing. It's because it started in his area because of the Kinesis Lake Association saying, let's go first. COVID has hit, and so that sadly is postponed this year,
right.
And will resume next year. And we're doing it by area, and we're revising, so you can be following along with our revised septic bylaw that will probably be coming forward to council, I don't know, September, October. Don't have the appropriate staff on the call to follow that.
Okay, so another item, if we move off of cabins, there was a presentation on shoreline measurement, was part of that presentation, which I found very interesting with the straight lines and so on. A number of properties, including my own, have curved shorelines. Now, what happens is, in some cases, and this may not be the larger lots, how do you define how does the shoreline bylaw affect this? Because the shoreline bylaw specifies 30 meters, I believe, from high water. From what point do you use the 30 meters when you say from high water when the land is curved in? Do you do a straight line? What do you do?
Well, currently we only have the tree preservation bylaw at the county. We don't have a shoreline bylaw. That again was.
I call it, I'm sorry, I gave it the wrong name.
No, that's okay. So we're, again, and I think you were following that as well with your lake association.
Yes.
So again, that because of the difficulty for public consultation, that got postponed mid-March. And
I know.
Yeah, so land surveyors define where the high water mark is, and surveyors define the 30 meters where that is, not staff necessarily. They have
okay, but is they defining it by a linear path drawn, or from a certain point, if it's a curved, which many of them are, a curved lot, it's not a straight,
yeah,
where do they take 30 meters? It's going to be different for different sides of the property.
Thank you, Anna. Are you talking about the minimum water setback and where that is measured from?
Yeah, for which shoreline bylaw, yeah.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned lot frontage. Yeah, the definition for minimum water setback is the least distance between a high water mark and the nearest part of any structure. So it's the closest part of that building to the closest part of the high water mark.
Okay, going up the angle.
My understanding, talking to surveyors, it doesn't go up the angle. It's measured on a horizontal plane.
Goes across, goes horizontal, yeah. Okay, just wanted to make sure of that. Now, I have a couple little quick questions. One is about the hens. Now, since, I mean, it's not affecting our property per se, it's affecting the more in-town. I think it's overall a very interesting idea, and I strongly support local food efforts, just to be cautious about this. Years ago, I did work in an open-faced chicken facility, so I'm familiar with running around chasing chickens, and they weren't in these little coops. You will be introducing other animals there'll be a bait for other animals to come in. You've got the raccoons, you've got other creatures that will be attracted to this. So you have to be careful. I noticed there's a limit that was preferred, which is good to see, and there should be some a coverage. So I support that in principle. And the concept. I just think that we need to be aware of how many you allow in the town. I mean, is everybody, if they meet these criteria, going to have chickens available? Are you going to have any kind of overall limit so you don't create an imbalance of too much of a good thing, maybe may not be a good thing? And the other thing is, when I heard mentioned that it's very good for fertilizing, it reduces the use of pesticides. My gosh, we shouldn't be using the pesticides in the first place. And I don't think that's been considered there. So, yeah, I do not support it. I just think you have to be careful with what you do and the amount that you allow. One other question of clarification I had concerns rafts. It was mentioned they have to be rafts out on the water. Is there any distance that they have to be out from the water from the shoreline?
Yeah.
Minimum of 2 meters.
Maximum?
Minimum.
Is there
a minimum of 2 meters. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation about maximum because, and council did bring this up initially. In Haliburton, we have some unique scenarios with regards to some lakes are very shallow for quite a while until you go out and until you reach depth for swimming, whereas some other water bodies, that same distance, you might hit the other shoreline. So staff did add a provision that said a raft shall not restrict the navigation of the waterway or access to other properties, with the intent that the raft should not be in the middle of the lake where it's going to get hit by a boat, and it should be not be blocking access to neighboring properties, that kind of thing. Just the intent there was for safety. So that's what's proposed so far.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have anything more at the moment because, again, this was short notice for me to pull anything together. So, but thank you for the opportunity.
And I appreciate you participating. And this is just the beginning, so you'll follow along the process, and you're in the loop, and will continue to be notified.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. So I think that concludes our day, this afternoon's public open house, unless Jeff, you want to add anything further?
I don't have anything else to add. I just want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you, Mayor, and thank all the council members and other staff members. This has been a long haul. I've had some great support from staff, specifically within my department. So I just want to thank everybody for attending this, especially this unique virtual open house. Hopefully after this year, we won't have to do it ever again.
Yeah, we'll go back to the old-fashioned sticky notes and maps all on the wall. But also thank you, Jeff, again for having the expertise to do this in-house. I know this has added quite a bit of workload for you, but we're very lucky that nobody knows the zoning bylaw like the people that work in that township. And to go and hire somebody out may seem like a easy thing, but it's much better done in-house. So much appreciated. So anything else? Because this isn't a regular meeting, we don't adjourn, we don't have resolutions. I guess we just say goodbye, go enjoy the weekend. The sun is still shining today. And be safe, everyone. Stay in your bubble.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.